All right, let's dive into the world of Osho. Ready for a journey through some pretty fascinating ideas on inner growth, transformation, all that good stuff. And it's all coming straight from your collection of his talks.
And what's really cool is we're going deep with the wisdom you specifically chose.
Exactly. It's like a personalized guide through a treasure trove, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of treasure, let's talk about Osho for a sec. This guy, an Indian mystic and spiritual teacher, he wasn't afraid to tackle the big topics, right? Meditation, self-acceptance, love, relationships, even the nature of the mind. If you can think of it, Osho probably had something insightful to say about it, often surprising too.
Definitely. He really challenges conventional thinking. He really pushes us to look inward, and, I think that can be quite refreshing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that really pops out from these talks is Osho's emphasis on surrender and acceptance.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I know surrender might sound a bit like waving a white flag,
Right.
but Osho sees it very differently.
He does. He sees surrender not as weakness, but as letting go of the ego's need to control every little thing. It's about diving into the depths of your own consciousness. He actually compares it to swimming.
Oh,
The
interesting.
more you surrender, the deeper you go, and the more you discover.
I like that analogy. It makes surrender feel less like giving up and more like, well, an adventure.
Exactly. And it goes hand in hand with acceptance, too. Accepting all parts of ourselves, even the parts, that we might consider stupid or try to hide. Osho's point is that those parts are still part of us, and rejecting them just keeps us fragmented. He says nothing has to be dropped and nothing has to be cut away. Otherwise, you will always remain a fragment. You will never be whole. That stupid part is also you.
Wow, that's powerful. It's like giving ourselves permission to be fully human, flaws and all.
It is. It's about recognizing that wholeness includes those messy, imperfect parts of ourselves.
So, thinking about your own life, what are some parts of yourself that you might be struggling to accept? What would it look like to fully embrace those parts?
Yeah, that's a really great question to reflect on. Osho's perspective offers a real sense of freedom, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
It's like saying, hey, you're already complete even with your quirks and imperfections.
It is freeing. And speaking of freedom, another thing that comes up in these talks is the importance of playfulness and celebration in spiritual growth. Osho, he seems to be challenging the idea that spirituality has to be all serious and somber all the time, like walking around with a permanent frown, only eating kale chips.
Well, yeah, he definitely shakes things up. He actually
Yeah.
talks about how religion and spirituality have become associated with being, depressed and blocked. And he says the people who are truly able to connect with something greater are those who can still dance and enjoy life, the festive ones.
The festive ones, right. Like, lighten up, people. Have some fun.
Yeah. And there's real wisdom in that. He believes that happiness is a foundation for spiritual growth. He even says, a happy man cannot sin.
Wow.
Now, that's a pretty bold statement.
It is.
Yeah.
But it speaks to this belief that when you're genuinely happy, you're in alignment with your true nature, which naturally leads to more positive actions and thoughts.
Exactly. It's like your inner compass is pointing in the right direction.
Right.
And you're more likely to make choices that are in harmony with your highest self.
Right. Speaking of inner compasses, another fascinating concept that Osho dives into is this idea of divine emptiness. Now, at first glance, emptiness might sound a bit, well, empty?
Yeah.
Right. But Osho flips the script on that.
He does. What's fascinating about Osho is he challenges a lot of these preconceived notions that we have. He explains that an empty mind, it's not a void. It's actually a state of inner stillness and receptivity. It's a space where something greater can enter, where creativity can flourish. He says, in fact, an empty mind is God's workshop. It's like clearing out the clutter to make room for something truly magical to happen.
I love that. It makes you think differently about meditation and quieting the mind, right? It's not about erasing thoughts, but about creating space for something more profound to emerge.
Absolutely. And he uses this really interesting anecdote to illustrate this point. He talks about this visitor who had such a profound experience of emptiness that she literally couldn't remember her own name.
Wow.
It completely freaked her out at first, but Osho explained it as a glimpse of Satori, a glimpse into her true nature.
And that's a pretty intense experience. But it speaks to the power of letting go, doesn't it?
Right.
Of surrendering to something bigger than ourselves.
It does. It highlights this idea that our true selves, they aren't defined by our thoughts or emotions. There's something deeper, something beyond those fluctuations of the mind. And meditation can be a pathway to accessing that deeper self.
Okay, so we've talked about surrender, acceptance, playfulness, and even this divine emptiness. It feels like we've already covered so much ground, but I know there's still so much more to explore.
Oh, there is. We'll continue this journey in part two, where we'll delve into Osho's perspectives on relationships, communication, and the transformative power of love. Get ready for some thought-provoking insights.
I'm excited to keep diving in. And remember, you can always pause and rewind if you need a moment to process all this wisdom. We'll see you in part two.
Welcome back to your deep dive into the world of Osho. So in part one, we explored some pretty big ideas, right? Like surrender, acceptance, even dipped our toes into those mysterious waters of divine emptiness.
We did.
Now, let's see how those concepts play out in the messy, beautiful world of relationship.
Okay, so relationships. That's a topic where Osho, he definitely didn't hold back. He had a lot to say about love, connection, all those complexities that come with human interaction.
He did. And his perspective is, it's really refreshing because he doesn't shy away from the challenges. He goes beyond those romanticized notions of love that we often see in like movies and songs and really gets real about the ups and downs, the joys and the struggles that come with being in a relationship with another human being.
Right. It's not all sunshine and roses, that's for sure. But amidst all that realness, Osho also really emphasizes the transformative power of relationships. He sees them as opportunities for growth, for healing, for deeper understanding of ourselves and others.
Absolutely. And one of the key ingredients for that transformation, according to Osho, is honesty. He stresses the importance of open communication, even when it comes to expressing difficult emotions or needs.
Yeah, he tells this story about a woman who's feeling frustrated because her husband needs a lot of solitude
Right.
and she wants more time together and she's not sure how to bridge that gap.
Right. And what's interesting is that Osho doesn't tell her to just suppress her needs or pretend everything's fine. Instead, he encourages her to express her desire for connection, but to do it in a way that's honest and respectful. He says, and you remember not to hurt him unnecessarily. When you want to be alone, simply say you want to be alone. So it's about being authentic about your own needs while also honoring your partner's needs.
That makes so much sense. It's like he's saying, be real with each other even when it's uncomfortable, because avoiding those difficult conversations can actually create more distance in the long run.
Exactly. And Osho, he takes this idea of honesty even further. He encourages couples to share everything, to hold nothing back. He says, in love, no secret is allowed. So it's about creating the space of vulnerability and trust where both partners can feel truly seen and accepted.
Hmm. That sounds beautiful, but also a bit scary, to be honest. What if you open up and you get rejected? That's the risk a lot of people avoid, right?
It is a risk. And Osho, he acknowledges that fear. He even shares an anecdote about a woman who's, she's hesitant to open up to her partner because of a physical limitation she's experiencing, and she's afraid of being judged or rejected.
Oh, that's so relatable, isn't it? We all have those insecurities that we try to hide, those fears of not being good enough.
We do, but what's fascinating is how Osho, he reframes rejection. He says, no rejection is personal, nor is any acceptance personal. Deep down they are energy phenomena. It's like saying that sometimes energies just don't align. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're, unworthy of love or connection.
That takes a lot of pressure off, doesn't it? It's not about taking it personally. It's about recognizing that sometimes it's just not a match. And that's not a reflection of your worth.
Exactly. And I think that's, a really liberating perspective, especially when it comes to dating or navigating new relationships. It allows you to approach those experiences with more courage and less fear of being hurt.
Right. So we've talked about honesty and the importance of expressing our needs. But what about those times when we actually need to be alone? Osho, he had some interesting things to say about the difference between loneliness and aloneness,
He
right?
did, and that distinction is really crucial. He describes loneliness as a negative state. It's a feeling of emptiness and lack. It's that ache in your heart that longs for something outside of yourself to fill it.
Right. It's like that feeling of being lost in a crowd, right? Surrounded by people, but still feeling utterly alone.
Exactly, and that's where aloneness comes in. Osho describes aloneness as this positive state of being, a feeling of completeness and contentment within yourself. Remember that term divine emptiness that we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Well, that applies here too.
Hmm. So it's not about being physically alone, but about finding that inner stillness and connection, regardless of whether you're surrounded by people or not.
Right. It's like that feeling of being at peace with yourself, comfortable in your own company. Osho even uses the analogy of a Himalayan peak, standing tall and solitary, but still connected to the vastness of the sky.
That's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
It's about finding that inner strength and independence that allows you to connect with others from a place of wholeness, not neediness.
Exactly. And it ties back to that idea of surrender, right? It's about letting go of the ego's need to control and allowing yourself to be fully present in each moment, whether you're alone or with others.
Right. Embracing the ebb and flow of life, the moments of solitude and the moments of connection.
Yeah. He encourages people to move between those polarities, to find a rhythm that works for them. He says, enjoy it, delight in it, but when it is finished, move to the other, make it a rhythm. So it's like dancing with life, embracing all its different tempos and movements.
Speaking of movement, Osho had some pretty strong opinions about the importance of physical activity, right?
Oh, absolutely. He was a huge believer in shaking things up, literally.
Yeah.
He saw movement as essential for releasing pent-up energy and maintaining overall well-being. He actually talks about how excess energy, if it's not channeled constructively, can lead to negative emotions like anger, aggression, even violence.
Yeah. He even goes so far as to say that people who don't know how to dance are already half paralyzed.
Right,
That's
you're
a
talking.
that's a pretty bold statement.
Well, it is,
Yeah.
but it highlights his belief in the transformative power of movement.
Mm.
He sees dance as a way to break free from the rigidity of the mind and reconnect with a more, primal, instinctual part of ourselves.
Right. It's about letting go of control and allowing the body to express itself freely.
And this freedom of expression extends to, creativity in all its forms. Osho saw creativity as a pathway to self-discovery, a way to connect with our true nature. He encouraged his followers to explore their creative impulses, whether it's through, painting, writing, music, or any other art form.
Right. It's about tapping into that flow of inspiration and letting it pour out without judgment or self-criticism.
Yeah, and he contrasts this with creativity that comes from the mind, which he sees as, mostly a rehashing of old ideas and borrowed concepts. He even shares an anecdote about Picasso, who, describes some of his own paintings as fake because they were simply repetitions of previous work, not truly original expressions.
So it's not just about creating something, it's about creating something that's truly authentic, something that comes from a deeper place within.
Exactly. It's about letting go of the ego's need to control and allowing something, new and unique to emerge.
Now, speaking of letting go of the ego, we have to talk about the orange robes. That was a pretty bold move on Osho's part, encouraging his followers to wear those bright orange robes.
It was. He wanted his followers to stand out, to challenge societal norms and confront their fears of being different. He says, that's the whole purpose of why I give you orange, to make you so separate that either you will go crazy or you will have to drop the whole wrong expectation.
It's like he's saying, if you're going to live an authentic life, you have to be willing to break free from the need for approval
Yeah.
and embrace your individuality.
Exactly. It's about having the courage to be yourself, even when it means going against the grain.
Now, speaking of courage, Osho had some pretty interesting views on fear. He didn't see it as something to be avoided or conquered, but as a symptom of a deeper issue.
Right. He saw fear as a sign that we're not fully living in alignment with our true selves. He says, fear is just a symptom. It is not a disease. There is no cure for it. There is no need.
So instead of trying to fight fear directly, he suggests focusing on cultivating love and living a more authentic life.
Exactly. He believes that as we move towards greater love and self-acceptance, fear naturally dissolves. It's like saying the antidote to fear is not courage but love.
And the love he's talking about isn't just romantic love. It's a more expansive love that encompasses all of life. Love for ourselves, love for others, love for the world around us.
Yeah, it's a love that's rooted in acceptance and a deep understanding of our interconnectedness.
It's a love that allows us to be fully present in each moment, embracing the beauty and the messiness of life with open hearts.
And that's a beautiful way to live.
We've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive into Osho's world. We've explored his thoughts on relationships, communication, the importance of movement and creativity, even his unique perspective on fear.
Mhm.
But there's still more to uncover.
There is. In part 3, we'll delve into Osho's insights on meditation, spiritual growth, and the path to enlightenment. Get ready to dive even deeper into the realm of inner transformation.
All right, welcome back to the final part of your deep dive into Osho. We've explored so much already. I mean, surrender, acceptance, relationships, the importance of shaking things up, like both physically and mentally. Now, let's dive into one of the well, I guess you could say cornerstones of Osho's teachings, meditation.
Ah, meditation, gateway to inner peace, right? But even meditation with Osho, it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. He wasn't about strict rules or rigid practices or anything like that.
Yeah, he's like, forget the dogma, find what works for you, which is pretty refreshing, I gotta admit.
Mm.
But with all these different techniques like dynamic meditation, humming, silent sitting, what's the common thread that kind of runs through them all?
It's all about awareness, really, becoming more present, more conscious, in each moment. Osho, he offered all these different techniques, this whole buffet, because he recognized that everyone is different, everyone's path is unique. But the ultimate goal is all the same, to wake up from that slumber of unconscious living.
And he also talked about using techniques as vehicles for love, not as ends in themselves, right?
Right.
So it's not about achieving like some kind of meditative perfection.
Yeah.
Sitting there like a statue with a perfectly blank mind.
Oh, he would laugh at that, I think. No, for Osho, meditation wasn't about emptying the mind completely. Remember divine emptiness?
Yeah.
Well, that applies here too. It's not a void. He saw meditation as a way to create space for something greater to enter,
Hmm.
a space for creativity, insight to kind of blossom. He said, in fact, an empty mind is God's workshop. If the mind is empty, the devil cannot enter. It's about creating a space for something truly transformative to happen.
And he tells this story about a visitor who experienced like such a profound state of emptiness during meditation that she literally couldn't remember her own name. She was
Wow.
totally freaked out. But Osho, he saw it as a glimpse of her true nature, like a glimpse of Satori.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful example of what can happen when we let go of those usual thought patterns and really dive deep within. And Osho really emphasizes that our true nature, it isn't defined by those fleeting thoughts and emotions, right? There's something deeper, more expansive, more timeless at the core of who we are.
But he also acknowledges that that journey inward, it can be challenging. It's not always a walk in the park. He even talks about how meditation can bring us face to face with our deepest fears.
It's true. Meditation can be like holding up a mirror to our shadow selves,
Yeah.
It can reveal those hidden parts of ourselves that we'd rather, not look at. But Osho, he wasn't about avoiding those difficult emotions or sweeping them under the rug.
Right. He seemed to encourage people to lean into the discomfort, I guess you could
Yeah.
say, to embrace those fears and just see what's on the other side.
Yeah, he did. He tells one woman who's experiencing anxiety during meditation, he says, if it feels like death, say, okay, I accept it. I am ready to die. That much will do. It's about surrender, trusting the process, even when it feels scary.
It takes a lot of courage to be willing to face those fears, to be that vulnerable.
It does. And Osho also emphasizes the importance of not getting, too attached to the highs and lows of the spiritual journey. He reminds us that it's not about chasing those peak experiences or getting discouraged when things, feel difficult.
Right. It's about finding that balance, that effortless flow between the opposites, joy and sorrow, light and shadow.
Yeah, he compares it to like the natural rhythm of life,
Yeah.
day and night, work and rest, expansion and contraction. It's about finding a rhythm that works for you, a
Mhm.
way of moving through life with a sense of grace and ease.
And he offers some pretty practical advice for navigating those ups and downs too, right? Like he suggests using the breath as an anchor, especially during those moments where we're feeling overwhelmed by strong emotions.
Yeah, he gives this really simple technique to someone who's struggling with anger. He says, whenever anger arises, just take a deep exhale and repeat the word anger 3 times. It sounds so simple, but it speaks to the power of mindfulness, of creating a pause between the stimulus and our reaction.
Right. It's like pressing the pause button on that automatic reaction
Yeah.
and giving ourselves a moment to choose a more conscious response.
Exactly. And Asha reminds us that this awareness, it's not about, suppressing or denying our emotions. It's about observing them without judgment, allowing them to, arise and pass through us without getting swept away by the current.
Yeah, becoming the witness, the observer of the mind's activity.
And this witnessing consciousness, it's not limited to meditation. Osho encourages us to bring this awareness into all aspects of life, our relationships, our work, our everyday interactions. It's about living with more intention, more mindfulness, more presence.
It's about savoring each moment, appreciating the beauty in the ordinary, and finding that sense of peace and connection no matter what life throws our way.
And that's pretty amazing way to live.
It is. Well, this brings us to the end of your deep dives into the world of Osho. We've covered a lot of ground, from surrender and acceptance to the transformative power of relationships and the depths of meditation. But remember, this is just the beginning of your own exploration.
Yeah, what insights resonated with you the most? What questions are still kind of swirling in your mind? Take some time to reflect on these teachings and see how they can guide you on your own journey of self-discovery.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time,
Hmm.
keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.